Are you looking for the best gaming mouse? In this video, we will look at some of the 4 best gaming mouse on the market. Before we get started with our video, we have included links in the description. So make sure you check those out to see which one is in your budget range. Number 1. Razer Viper V3 Pro. Connectivity: wireless, wired, USB-C. Shape: symmetrical. Weight: 54 grams. Dimensions: 5 by 2.51 by 1.57 inches. Sensor: Razer Focus Pro 35K optical sensor Gen 2 switches. Razer optical mouse switches Gen 3 maximum polling rate. 8000 Hz, programmable buttons. 6 battery life, rated up to 95 hours at 1000 Hz. If money is no object, the best gaming mouse with a symmetrical design that we've tested is the Razer Viper V3 Pro. It costs a hefty $160, but it'll give you little to complain about if you play a ton of competitive PC games and can stomach the price. With its lightly grooved sides, noticeable but not aggressive hump and gentle flare-outs toward the back, the Viper V3 Pro shape should be comfortable for a wide range of hand sizes and grip types. It's a bit on the wider side, and it probably works best with a claw or fingertip grip, but it's not so short or flat that it can't accommodate palm grippers. The main mouse buttons are contoured in a way that gives your fingers a natural resting place, and there are little ledges on either side to subtly nudge them to the right spot when you're scrambling in-game. Put another way, this is one of the safer shapes we've tested. The Viper's build quality is excellent. It's impressively light at 54 grams, which makes it a breeze to flick around in fast-paced games, yet its matte plastic frame isn't covered in dust-inviting holes like many other options around the same weight. We've seen zero hints of creaking, flexing, or rattling after months of testing. The finish picks up some finger smudges but is grippy and delightfully soft to the touch. The main click buttons use durable optical switches but aren't especially loud. Though they aren't quite as full or crisp as the absolute best mechanical switches, they're still snappy to press, neither too firm nor too light. The 2 programmable side buttons are well-sized and easy to reach. The scroll wheel, meanwhile, is tight and quiet, with clearly defined steps and a textured finish. Performance, as is the case with many high-end gaming mice these days, is effectively flawless. Razer's Focus Pro 35K optical sensor Gen 2, say that 5 times fast, is basically overkill from a technological perspective but makes the mouse exceptionally accurate and consistent all the same. It's aided by amply sized, smooth-gliding PTFE feet and a rock-solid connection to an included hyperpolling dongle. The latter lets the mouse reach a maximum polling rate of 8000 Hz, but as noted below, few people will actually notice any benefit from jumping that high. Mostly, it'll just zap battery life. Razer says the Viper V3 Pro can get up to 95 hours at 1000 Hz, which is fine for this market and roughly consistent with our experience, but that drops to just 17 hours at 8000 Hz. If the price didn't make it obvious, the Viper V3 Pro is for gaming enthusiasts. As such, it gives up some of the perks you'd find on more mainstream mice. There's no RGB lighting or Bluetooth, while the power button/DPI switcher is located on the bottom of the device to make it harder to hit by accident. Since the device uses a special dongle instead of a traditional receiver, it still requires you run a separate USB-C cable from your PC or gaming laptop. You can connect over that cable when the battery is low, thankfully, but it's relatively thick. And while Razer's Synapse software makes it simple enough to adjust settings, it's something of a resource hog. It's also Windows only. These are all nitpicks though. The Viper V3 Pro is outstanding, and it should feel right at home in the hands of committed FPS players. Exceptional performance. Superb build quality. Comfortable for most grip types and hand sizes. Number 2. Razer DeathAdder V3 Pro. Connectivity: wireless, wired, USB-C. Shape: right-handed. Weight: 63 grams. Dimensions: 5 by 2.67 by 1.73 inches. Sensor: Razer Focus Pro 30K optical sensor. Switches: Razer optical mouse switches Gen 3 maximum polling rate. 8000 Hz. Classic base model requires optional dongle. Programmable buttons. 6 battery life. Rated up to 90 hours at 1000 Hz. If you want a premium gaming mouse with a more ergonomic shape, get the Razer DeathAdder V3 Pro. It packs most of the same strengths as the Viper V3 Pro but has a taller, slightly wider and more dramatically flared design that's tailored to right-handed users. Most people with medium to large hands should find it to be a natural fit with a palm or claw grip, though it'll probably be a touch too fat for smaller-handed folks and fingertip grippers. This kind of shape isn't as easy to whip around as the Viper, but its high, sideways sloping hump should provide a more relaxing place to rest your hand over the course of the day. Razer sells two variants of the DeathAdder V3 Pro, one with a similar soft-touch finish as the Viper V3 Pro, and one with a more textured matte plastic coating. We tested the latter. It's not as grippy or smooth to the touch, but it's still good, and it's much less of a fingerprint magnet. Also, the side buttons are bigger, closer together and a smidge less tight, but they're still difficult to hit by accident. The design is heavier at 63 grams, too, but still seriously lightweight. The PTFE feet are smaller but still glide reliably. And while the sensor is technically a generation older, performance is effectively flawless. Otherwise, you're looking at a similar feature set. The optical main buttons are satisfying and consistent but not overly sensitive. The lightly notched scroll wheel is soft, quiet and resistant enough, if not firm. Battery life is rated at a decent 90 hours, and you can connect a lighter and more flexible USB-C cable in a pinch. Both versions of the mouse also support polling rates up to 8,000 Hz, though only the SKU with the smooth touch texture comes with a wireless dongle that enables those higher rates in the box. The textured classic base model comes with a smaller USB receiver that only goes up to 1,000 Hz, but since it's often available for less at third-party retailers, it's probably a better value. In general, the biggest knock against the DeathAdder V3 Pro is that it's expensive, with the 8,000 Hz model priced at $160. The newer DeathAdder V3 Hyperspeed, which costs $99, is a 1B pick here. Although it's positioned below the Pro in Razer's lineup, it's more of a DeathAdder V3 Pro Mini than a clear downgrade. It doesn't give up the rechargeable battery, cutout-free shell, optical switches and soft, if smudge-heavy, coating of its bigger sibling, and while its sensor is technically worse, it still performs wonderfully. Its battery life rating is actually 10 hours higher at 1,000 Hz. Plus it has a built-in storage compartment for its USB receiver. The major difference is that it's lighter, 55G, and more compact, with a lower profile scroll wheel and a marginally shorter hump. If your hands are on the smaller side, it's worth grabbing instead. Top shelf performance. Lightweight. Comfortable for those with medium to large hands. Number 3. Razer Basilisk V3. Connectivity, wired, USB-A. Shape, right-handed. Weight, 101 grams. Dimensions, 5.11 by 2.95 by 1.65 inches. Sensor, Razer Focus Pro 30K optical sensor. Switches, Razer optical mouse switches Gen 2. Maximum polling rate, 1000 Hz. Programmable buttons. 11. Battery life, rated not applicable. It's a few years old, but the Razer Basilisk V3 remains our favorite wired gaming mouse with an ergonomic design. This one is more aggressively contoured than ergo mice like the DeathAdder V3 Pro, with a large rubberized thumb rest, long main buttons and a rounded moderately sized hump running down its middle. It's fantastically comfy for palm grippers with medium to large-sized hands, but it'll also play well with claw grips. Those who prefer a fingertip grip or just have smaller hands will likely find it too chunky, however. The design as a whole feels robust. There's some minor flexing on the bottom right side when you press down hard, but you'd have to go out of your way to notice it. The matte plastic finish is pleasingly textured and sufficiently grippy. The cable is plenty flexible, while the PTFE feet glide smoothly. We also dig the fun but not garish RGB lighting around the mouse's underside and scroll wheel. There are 11 customizable buttons in total, including 2 easy-to-reach side buttons and a dedicated sensitivity clutch that lets you momentarily drop to a lower DPI for moments where you may need to aim more precisely. The latter will be particularly tough for the smaller-handed to reach comfortably, though. The Basilisk V3 uses older optical switches than our other Razer top picks, but we haven't had any double-clicking issues after well over a year of testing. While main clicks aren't nearly as fast as those on the Endgame Gear OP1 8K, they strike an agreeable balance between firmness and speed. They aren't all that loud, either. Similar to the Viper V3 Pro, the buttons are grooved in a way that naturally invites your index and middle fingers. The scroll wheel might be the weakest element. It has clearly defined steps and an easily identifiable texture, but it's fairly loud and a bit wobbly. That said, it can tilt side to side, which helps explain the wobbliness, and there's a built-in toggle that lets you swap between a normal ratcheted scroll and a free spin mode. That can be handy outside of games. Say, when you need to scroll through a giant document or Excel sheet. Razer's Synapse software is still naggy with updates and Windows only, but it makes customizing DPI levels, macros, and RGB effects simple enough. You can save up to 5 different profiles to the mouse itself, though your lighting customizations won't carry over. We haven't had any major issues with sensor accuracy either, but at roughly 100 grams, the Basilisk V3 is obviously heftier than the ultralight mice we highlight above. While you absolutely can go off in Counter-Strike or Valorant with it, the mouse's weight and wide frame mean it's not expressly designed for games like those. It also can't go above a 1000 Hz polling rate. In many ways, this is the exact opposite of the OP18K, a device that feels designed from the ground up for competitive fare. Instead, the Basilisk V3 makes sense for righties who want a comfy and reliable mouse they can turn to for more casual gaming across genres. Razer sells it for $70, but since it's usually available for less than $50 at third-party retailers these days, you can consider it our pick for the best budget gaming mouse as well. It's worth noting that Razer released a slightly refreshed model called the Basilisk V3 35K since our last update. That one comes with a technically improved sensor and newer optical switches, though the weight and overall shape are virtually identical. Given that we didn't have many issues with the tech inside of original V3, we'd still recommend getting the older version while it's still in stock and available for less. If you see the V3 35K on sale for a similar price, however, it should be safe to just get that one instead. Super comfortable for medium to large hands. Well built, with flexible cable. Versatile scroll wheel. Good value. Number 4. Corsair Scimitar RGB Elite. Connectivity, wired, USB-A, shape, right-handed weight, 108 grams, dimensions, 4.98 by 2.48 by 1.57 inches, sensor, PixArt PMW3391, switches, Omron D2FC, F.K. maximum polling rate, 1000 Hz, programmable buttons, 17 battery life, rated not applicable. If you want a mouse specifically designed for MMO and MOBA games, get the Corsair Scimitar RGB Elite. It does the most important thing any MMO mouse can do, which is let you access several in-game actions with minimal effort. That's thanks to its 12 programmable side buttons, all of which deliver a comfortable, firm but not stiff sensation when pressed. 2 of the panel's 4 button rows are textured, which makes them easier to distinguish without having to look down. Uniquely, you can physically reposition this side panel with an Allen key included in the box, so if you find the buttons difficult to reach by default, you can address that. Either way, having a host of buttons right under your thumb makes it much easier to play MMOs like Final Fantasy XIV or even single-player RPGs like Baldur's Gate 3, which ask you to navigate multiple hotbars of commands at any given time. Like most MMO mice, the Scimitar RGB Elite is on the larger and heavier 108G side, but it's not the bulkiest model we've seen. Its shape should be accommodating to palm and claw grips, and most hand sizes. The middle has a rounded, not overly aggressive hump, while the bottom is more gently sloped than rivals like Razer's Naga lineup. The overall construction feels well built, with a smooth matte finish, a grippy pinky rest and decent PTFE feet. Internally, its optical sensor, the PixArt PMW3391, isn't exactly advanced these days, but it's more than consistent enough for MMOs and MOBAs, which don't rely on precise, quick-twitch movements. It has no significant issues with latency, either. However, there are a few downsides. The braided cable feels durable but somewhat stiff. The scroll wheel is grippy and accurate enough, but it's a touch too recessed between the main buttons, and it could be firmer. Those main buttons never feel mushy, but they use mechanical switches, so they carry more of a long-term durability risk than optical alternatives. Corsair rates them at 50 million clicks. And Corsair's IQ software is, frankly, the worst. You can use it to customize key bindings, assign macros, adjust the mild RGB lighting and save profiles to the mouse, but figuring out how is wildly unintuitive. Nevertheless, the MMO gaming mouse market doesn't really have one killer option these days. At a price that usually hovers in the $60 to $75 range, the Scimitar RGB Elite offers better value than most. If you hate cables, Corsair sells a wireless version of the device too. Cleverly textured side buttons make MMOs easier to navigate. Generally comfortable and well built. Decent value relative to MMO mouse market.